The federal government has officially called an independent public inquiry into its use of the Emergencies Act. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau invoking the act back in February amid protests and blockades that brought downtown Ottawa and the Windsor border to a standstill. Adrian Ghobrial reports.
Before the smoke even cleared from Parliament Hill, questions rose about the Liberal government's decision to invoke the Federal Emergencies Act.
This is about keeping Canadians safe, protecting people's jobs, and restoring confidence in our institutions.
For weeks, horns blared in our nation's capital. Area residents say they felt terrorized. Businesses were vandalized. Weeks of perceived inaction by local police cost Ottawa's top cop his job. On the opposite side of Ontario, a multi-billion-dollar blockade bottlenecked the Ambassador Bridge. The Windsor protests led to Ontario's premier declaring the province under a state of emergency on February 11th. 3 days later, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made this unprecedented announcement.
The federal government has invoked the Emergencies Act.
That decision is now leading to a national debate, and the pending inquiry could set the precedent for decades to come in Canada.
There is a danger with kind of normalizing states of emergency, that anytime something bad happens, the government has recourse to the Emergencies Act that suspends civil liberties.
Lawyer Eva Krajewska has filed a lawsuit on behalf of the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, who are suing the federal government over their use of the Emergencies Act, claiming it was both unnecessary and unconstitutional.
It suspended the right to peaceful assembly. It also limited the rights to freedom of expression.
The act clearly states that if invoked, an inquiry must take place to look into the circumstances that led to the declaration. The deadline for the Trudeau government to announce an independent inquiry was today.
The Commission will operate at arm's length from the government, and it will conduct its work independently. The Commissioner will have all of the powers and authorities granted to him under the Inquiries Act.
The government wants to hold the protesters accountable rather than holding the government accountable, which is what this should really be about.
Part of the inquiry will look into whether or not the government met the criteria clearly laid out in the legislation to invoke the Emergencies Act. Multiple Conservative MPs don't believe the threshold was met.
They need to investigate whether or not the measures that the government used were appropriate. And I think that's what Canadians need to see, so that we can know in the future when facing challenges like this, when is and is it not appropriate to use the Emergencies Act.
There's also a separate review of the declaration of emergency underway. Tomorrow, 2 high-ranking Liberal cabinet ministers will be giving their testimony. I'm Adrian Ghobrial for City News.